morning, my friend.
Good morning, Dominic. This is Rick Spisak from Poets of the East. How you doing today?
Well, uh, I'm a whole lot better than I was last month. Uh, yeah, I had some kind of after all the radiology and the blood tests and all of that, I suffer from what's called acute carboxy sensitivity, and I probably have some asbestos damage. So I'm on very limited duty, and since I live a solitary writer's life, that's not hard for me to do. I'm deep, deep, deep in a new book called 101 Elsie Street. The house I saw before I went to Vietnam on a automobile trip around San Francisco, and I told the two women who were driving me around that I'm going to live in this house, and they kind of laughed, and it would turn out that in 1967 I went from New York to San Francisco, and I lived in that house for 7 years.
Your adventures took you across the globe to the Far East to Vietnam, and then you ended up on the West Coast and had some other adventures there. Talk a little bit about some of your adventures.
You got it. Where'd they go laugh? On the back of one of my books, a book called Dear Miss B, it says it's a long way from Coney Island to Vietnam. And being named Dominic and being put in a Catholic school with Dominican nuns, those women tortured me for 5 years. They tortured me. They hit me, they slapped me, they slapped my hands with rulers. And interestingly enough, the book I'm working on right now, called 101 Elsie Street, goes from my about 5-year-old to my 75-year-old life. And I got banged around pretty good. There's a movie called A Bronx Tale with Robert De Niro and Charles Palmieri, and I kind of lived that life in my teenage years, where my uncle Mimi was a big gangster and my dad was one of the straightest, most honest guys you know. And I got involved with automobiles, and I quit school at 14 years old, and I went to work at H&L Sunoco service station on Neptune Avenue. And by 15, I could hotwire and steal any car on the road. And later, in my middle 16th year, my cousin caught me, and him and the priest and my father, they changed my birth certificate, and they put me in the army. The army thought I was 19, and I wound up in Vietnam for 18 months, and I came back an absolute madman. I was, in the words of Byron, mad, bad, and dangerous to know. I got addicted to cocaine. I stole stuff. And as odd as this is going to sound, getting put in prison saved my life. And I got on the books. I got 4 associate degrees through correspondence work. I moved to Oregon when I got out of prison, and I spent 20 years as a groundskeeper in an Orthodox church. I turned 19 acres that had been abandoned into a park-like setting. And to this day, it's probably the thing I'm the most proud of. I turned that place into I worked every week, and I learned the whole history of Orthodoxy, and I became, I don't know, in the words of Neruda, when I was, nobody could escape death, but you can find love to get through life. And then in 2005, my stepdaughter, she had had 2 babies, and I was not really interested in being a full-time grandpa. So I loaded my truck, my boat, and I moved to Florida. And I made a decision that other than whatever work I had to do just to eat and pay the bills, I was going to get serious about writing. And since 2007, I've published 14 books. And I take it very seriously, but I have also seen that whole thing with social media. It makes me crazy, and I am so easily distracted that I go down the rabbit hole all the time. And like the situation that today, I was just thinking before you called, the who's going to be the James Fenimore Cooper of, say, 20, 30 years from now, who instead of writing The Last of the Mohegans, writes The Last of the Americans. I see the empire in free fall. This crazy nonsense that my right to have a gun is more important to your kid's life to live. And this whole crazy stuff. And I don't know what to make of it. So I spend at least 4 hours a day chained to my chair and putting in pages of this new book, which it's different. Every book I've published has been by a small independent, another poet who has his own little press, like Seb Dubinsky, James Goddard, Chris Agblum, and people like that. But this is out of a publishing house in Michigan called Danzig Books, and it's actually, they have a marketing department. So I'm excited about it, but I also know in my heart that I don't care even what the Bible says. There's nothing new under the sun. There's everything been said, but it hasn't been said by me with my own perspective. And I get tied up in what does it all matter? What does it all mean? And then used to be, when I first started in the poetry scene back in 1966 at the St. Mark's Poetry Project with Ann Waldman, Ted Berrigan, then called Leroy Jones, Victor Hernandez Cruz, Diane DePrima, Sandra McCormick, and I was stunned by what they used to call scat that evolved into rap, rhythm and poetry. And, it was so funny. I was thinking about doing a scat right now.
Dominic, go ahead. Have a little fun.
Talking on the telephone, hearing voices I have known from now and long ago. I wonder to myself as I sit there and think, they're talking, I'm listening, I'm talking, they're listening. And what is this wire transfer? What is this business really all about? When all we really ever had was each other. There is no other thing. It's like the beginning, the middle, and the end all seem to happen at once. How about that?
That's awesome, man. Real time, live Dominic. That's the stuff. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, you briefly touched on this crazy gun debate. You're a person who has used guns in war. You've used guns, not to put too fine a point on it, in crime. And I think you have a unique perspective on this idea of people needing not just guns. Guns are one thing, but weapons of war, weapons that are strictly designed to kill mass quantities of human beings. And I was wondering, when you talk to your friends, what perspective do you offer them on this seeming need to own an AR, to own an automatic or semi-automatic rifle? What's your thoughts on that, sir?
Interestingly enough, I have probably one of the most diverse set of acquaintances and friends you can imagine. As it happens, one of my closest friends is an ex-command sergeant major in Special Forces. And my other closest friend is a short Jewish woman whose family was out and out communists, the labor movement. I think her aunts and uncles, they all knew Eugene Debs, and they were involved on Union Square in New York City with the original soapbox gangs. And out of the middle of that, what I take is what I say over and over again, and I quote General Smedley Butler over and over again. War is a racket. We were told we were fighting for flag and country. What we were hired muscle for Wall Street. And the whole thing about that, and this is not new. People are surprised, human sacrifices long before guns. And what happened, I think, at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, and certainly after World War II, when the corporate ownership found out how much money they could make from producing these phrase weapons of mass destruction. And if you take a really look at just the last three wars that America's started and been involved in, $9 to $11 trillion, had that money gone into cancer, healthcare, infrastructure, instead of going in and killing millions of people and being told about American exceptionalism. What a crock. And as far as gun ownership goes, I am totally torn between having it and not needing it, and needing it and not having it. And actually, the other day I was thinking, if it's got to where I got to put a pistol under my shirt to go to Publix to buy groceries, this shit is out of hand. And then my Special Forces brothers, they're all adamant about the fact that we are legal and responsible and well-trained gun owners. Okay. So the part being that, and there's some funny stuff around. If you need a AR-15 to go hunt with, you probably need dynamite to go fish with. And you look at the developments in just small arms, and it was a guy named Villers, a guy named Browning, and a guy named Colt that changed it all from what I like to refer to musket thinking in a machine gun world. And I am so done with the founders and the Constitution and my rights and everything that they say about the rights. They never talk about the responsibility. And okay, I'm driving on the road, 2-3 weeks ago, and the radio says, mass shooting grammar school in Texas. I almost crashed my truck. I got an 11-year-old granddaughter in grammar school in Texas. And I pulled over and I'm like, what? So I switched to another channel and they said it wasn't in Austin. But I got to tell you, for a few minutes there, I was like, now what? Now what? And you can get crazy with karma and kickback, and goes around, comes around. I actually had a thought to myself, they killed my granddaughter because of what I did in Vietnam. And I was crying. Oh, I was crying. Somebody pulled over a very well put together woman in a business suit. And she got out of her car and came to my car, and she was like, are you okay? And I told her, yeah, I'm just very upset about this stuff in Texas right now. I have a granddaughter there. And she reached in and put her hand on my shoulder. And she said, is it safe for you to drive home? I said, yeah, I'll be okay. And I'm thinking, see, that's the kind of thing that somebody you don't know wants to comfort you. And there's this whole thing in the world about, I got mine and never mind you. This whole crazy thing about, I used to say that religion is a big racket, just like war. And some of it is. But I happen to know and love some people who have great comfort and sustained by their religious beliefs. That don't mean I got to be there with them. I don't think that the singularity of any religion counts. I was saved from what we call pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. I was a mess. I mean, I was just beyond words. And I'm sitting on the sidewalk up on, I forget the name of the street, but it was Sutter Street up. And my motorcycle's parked with a flat tire. And this little woman in a blue jumper from what then was called the Holy Order of Man sits right down next to me and puts her arm around me and says, you don't have to live like this anymore. And I'm like, what? And she said, I want you to call this person. And she gave me a phone number for a woman named Teresa Tate up in Oregon. And I went to the junkyard where I was living in an empty shell of a Volkswagen van. And I took my motorcycle down to the motorcycle dealer and I sold it. I didn't get much money for it. And the junkyard owner, my old boss and close friend, Nick Torelli, his wife came and handed me an envelope with $1,000 in it. And she said, go to Oregon. I heard about that. And I packed up my tools and what I owned, and I drove to Oregon, and I submitted myself to this woman's, like I told her, she civilized me. And she stood one time before me. I stand before you like Christ himself. I want you to change the way you act. We'll work on your thinking, but you're going to start being a good guy. And here's the funniest part of that whole thing. The first year I was around the church and started doing the yard work, and the other brothers came and built me this really nice garage. And some people went to the priest and they said, he scares us. And the priest said, I trust him with my life. You have to understand where he comes from and how he thinks. Fuck you is sometimes a term of endearment. And then I still have those people in my life.
I just said that's wonderful.
Yeah, and it was. And those 20 years, I got married in 1989 to a woman named Mary Catherine Murphy. And I was so in love with the sound of her voice when she would sing Pas Angelico, or she would do the Troperia or the Staccaria and do Lay Aside All Your Earthly Cares. And she would sing, the angel cried to the virgin. I'd just be undone. So one day I'm working on the tractor and she comes over and she says, what are you doing? I said, listen, why don't we get married? This single, she says, get married? Don't you think we should go on a date first? Yeah, okay. We'll go on a date, then we'll get married. And we got married on May 6th, Bright Week, 1989. And we were married for 15 years. And between her and Teresa and Father Matthew and Luke and Ken and some other people, and then Mary Catherine went to Teresa one time and said, he only eats from a bowl, and he's got his arm around the bowl. And he tells me to leave him alone. And Teresa brought me over. I'll never forget this if I live to be 100. Teresa brought me over. She set a table, and it was like an imaginary tea party. And she said, this is how you eat. You don't put your arm around. She had like an hour-long instruction on, I mean, we didn't go as far as salad forks and dessert spoons, but she taught me how to, you know, like I tell her, you civilized me. And interestingly enough, I have not had a warrant or a handcuff or a cop telling me to, you know, assume the position. And I've got this whole idea, and what I've learned about a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And I'm no longer religious at all. I don't go to church. I pray every day. I pray in the morning. I pray at night. But I pray for other people. And I pray for the peace and safety and length of days. And I don't have any more ideas about what my own part in things are than I've been given a gift. And in the book, Dear Miss B, which itself, can you imagine that story, Rick? I'm sitting on the computer in the Facebook, and I get a message request. I don't answer those. Well, let me see. So I open the box there, and it says, is this the Dominic who went to Mark Twain Junior High School and then went to Vietnam? And I go, what is this? So it says, if you answer, then you can contact, or something like that. So I answer yes. And then it pops up, do you remember Arlene Berkowitz? and I almost fell on the floor. I go, get out of here. I was so in love with Arlene Berkowitz, I couldn't even look at her like any 14-year-old boy who's in love with his school teacher. And she writes back, I am her daughter. I live in Israel, but we've recently come back. And while we were cleaning out her house, we found a whole box of letters that you had sent to her from Vietnam. And I went, what? What? I have no memory of those letters. She said, send me an address. I'll send them to you. And a box with 50-some letters came from boot camp to Okinawa when I got out, from 63 to March of 66. And I started reading some of them letters, and I was undone. And I called my daughter. I said, Mary, you're not going to believe this. And she said, Dad, those are not letters. He said, what are they? She said, they're your next book. And I wrote that book. And in the letters was a little note. And the note said, he was my student. He had such raw talent, and he adored me. I'm like, holy mackerel. So, and then, you know, I had already published some poetry books. I got some little recognition or whatever. And my friend Seb in Denmark, who's published a lot of books, he told me, never mind about the accolades, never mind about any of that, just do the work. And he published Bastards Had the Whole Hill Mind, my Vietnam poetry book. And it's actually used in 5 or 6 colleges now, teaching kids about Vietnam. So I take it pretty serious, Rick. And I put out I pulled out my last published poetry book, and if I can find my glasses, I'd like to read you a couple out of that book.
I would like you to do that, sir. Yes, thank you.
Okay. There go. The title is called Prepare for World Flip Out. And it was my dear friend and brother, Spain Rodriguez, who put up this little card with a guy coming out of the globe. And it said, I'll just read it. Earlier, I mentioned my past brother, Spain, and he had drawn long ago a guy popping out of a globe. Prepare for world flip out. Well, old dear friend of mine, your prophecy, past due, written all over it, has ideas are reason to die. Religion, politics, money, sex. The same old song with different tunes. But a hands up young man, where's the rest of the story? Takes death pills to the brain pan. Another day in Donut Land.
Bravo, sir.
Has absolutely nothing to do with how you fight, fuck, or shoot marbles, or how bad you think you are, as your sagging ass pants drop the 9 on the floor, and kaboom, somebody gets us a pill in the breastplate. No, not a bit, get, bit, splash, slash, strut, pose, posture, pimp, peacock, even if you're 60 pair of high-dollar sneakers. Nope, none of that. Real manhood is caring, showing you care, to friends, lovers, parents, even passers-by.
Bravo, sir, bravo.
Magic money. Hey, Hoover Dam, the Panama Canal, skyscrapers, jet planes, shit, the greatest engineered feat in history, was invisible. Took not a brick or a bit of steel to a rick. The Jelly Bean, Reaganus Maximus, and David Stockman both colluded on a major plumbing project. That trickle-down bullshit. Super rich got 9-inch pipes. Very rich got 8. Only really rich got a few. One-way valves and fire hoses. It never went down. It only went up. As these days, some asshole with a 90-footer toots his horn at the guy who's got a 140-footer. And they both do not deal with 6-foot seas if they had to.
Wonderful.
More.
Please.
More. I may not be lying, but I may not be telling the truth either. I love this double speak, to triple backflip the mumble jumble soundbite that is later rejected, deleted. 'Cause we all have ears. One side plays the other side like a piano and then claims to not read music. I miss LBJ. He at least lied with gusto. Lion Linden was at least someone who did not hide his sneaky shit. These guys now, bunch of blow-dried, puffed-up assholes. That's what being nice paired to how I really feel is. Oh, boy. I tell you, I go along. On a more serious note, those of us who did the grand adventure in Southeast Asia have lots of scars. Some you see, missing limbs, eyes burning in a distant visage. A bunch of them, me for sure, hid them. Fuck them. Let them eat rice. All of a sudden, it's popular now to support the troops, not the troop senders so much. Let me tell you something. They locked up the really dangerous ones on real or mythical charges. CONTELPRO was not limited to left-wing agitators. Nope. The FBI did a very good job of sorting out the pussy-chasing pot smokers from the really pissed off. Oh, man, I tell you. And they go laugh. I had another book published recently called Boardwalk Dreams, and it's a flip-over book. It's my most famous title in my life. And I've been working on that book since I'm 12 years old. And they go, Midway Moves and Boardwalk Dreams. Chances. Take a chance. Step right up. Step right up. You know, when I give the lady a free prize. Chances. Customs, habits, routines, freeway traffic, sunrise, dawn all over. This morning is a direct proof tomorrow came. Yesterday left. Heaven and earth rolled over again, puffing a Grand Cru cigar in the truck on the way to work. Humanity lottery, one ticket at a time. Is whatever is in the stall when gets there is mine. Today will end, job by job, hour by hour, till the next rollover. Take a chance. Romance, finance, nuts, bolts, and washers. Death is no chance at all.
Dominic, that's absolutely wonderful. If I could ask you to do me one final one, and then we'll have to call it a day.
Okay.
Thank you so much. This has been so marvelous as always.
Here we go. Brooklyn Boyhood. Say, bad. Tell you what I'm gonna do. You buy 3 darts. Midway Moves and Boardwalk Dreams. My Coney Island upbringing shows sometimes. Trying to fast talk my way out from under a mess of my own making. Slum, we called the free prizes. No one ever got the big bears. There was a time when I wore kangaroo high-top shoes. Old man comforts, we called them. Hair slicked back, selling 3 darts for a quarter. Say, bad, tell you what I'm going to do. Step right up. There's a winner every time.
My friend, you did wonderful. Thank you so much, Dominic. I really appreciate
you're welcome,
it.
my friend. Thank you, Rick.
Take care of yourself, brother.
Doing?
Be well, brother.
For me.
Okay.
You be safe.